What's good? Bo back at you with another video. Today I'm going to be discussing Havoc Demon Hunters in Shadowlands, how the class feels, the changes it has received from BFA, the Covenants, the Conduits, the Legendaries, PvP, basically everything you need to know going into Shadowlands. Keep in mind, this information is all subject to change before the release of Shadowlands. However, I have done my best to proof check and make this guide as accurate as possible with up-to-date information. So let's get into it. We're getting some things baseline now along with some new talents, but many changes have been made to nerf our overall survivability and tankiness. Immolation Aura is now baseline and generates less Fury. Chaotic Transformation and Furious Gaze are also now baseline. Furious Gaze will be unlocked at the highest rank for our I-Beam, which we won't have access to until we are able to level. Both good changes, especially Furious Gaze. It helps make the spec feel more fluid and similar to how it felt in BFA. Blade Dance no longer increases our chance to dodge by 100% for 1 second, except in meta where it becomes Death Sweep. This is a pretty big nerf both for PvE and PvP. There was a certain area of expertise and skill associated with Blade Dance previously, knowing what could be dodged by Blade Dance and what couldn't. In high keys, Blade Dance was crucial for cheesing certain abilities, especially in more challenging content where mechanics have the potential to one-shot you. Being able to avoid some of them completely is game-changing. Most notable instance I can think of for this is the last boss in Tol Dagor. The dead shots he does could be Blade Dance indefinitely, making it so no one in your party would get the debuff from it. In the grand scheme of things, for most casual players, this may not seem that big, but for players who are looking for instances where they can distinguish themselves from other Demon Hunters, this will be extremely impactful. Blur has been nerfed to only reduce damage by 20% instead of 35% now. Kinda shitty, but it's still a great cooldown. I-Beam is still uncapped for AoE, but it's square root cap now. To put this in basic terms, it means you will do less damage to each mob, but the overall damage will be higher as more mobs are introduced. However, the difference in overall damage will continue to get smaller and smaller. Burning Hatred is a new talent that buffs our Immolation Aura. It increases the fury generated from Immolation Aura by 60, bumping it to 80 total. Insatiable Hunger has been changed to buff the damage of our Demon's Bite by 20% and generates 5 to 10 additional fury. I actually really like this buff. While you don't necessarily feel the impact of this, it is just a small boost to the current gameplay. If you find yourself not needing the extra fury from Burning Hatred, this could be a solid option. Spell Mastery has been removed and replaced with Unbound Chaos. After using Immolation Aura, Unbound Chaos will summon your inner demon that will slam into targets at the end of your next spell rush. This talent is pretty strong as it stands right now, and I think it could get nerfed, but all the talents in this row are very strong. This is a fun talent that previously required you to have your Immolation Aura active while fell rushing to get the benefit of it. That restriction has been changed now, making your Immolation Aura give you an indefinite buff to your next fell rush. Surprisingly, it is not hard to aim as long as you're aware of the distance your fell rush travels, and it helps that the radius on the impact is large. It can whiff sometimes though, and that's definitely a feels bad moment, and that's probably the biggest deterrent for this talent. The aiming aspect of it can be unpredictable at times, and you might want more consistent options with the other talents. To make this more reliable at times, you can Vengeful Retreat back into a fell rush to give you some distance to aim it. You can also fell rush into walls or other objects to shorten your distance traveled, making it much harder to whiff. Some small examples there, but just be aware of these things so you can minimize the time spent trying to line it up and continue DPSing. Glaive Tempest is another powerful AoE talent in this row. This ability is reminiscent of the Legion artifact ability. It costs 30 fury and shoots 2 glaives outward from your position in a circular manner. Damage this ability did when it first came out on the beta was very good, but it has been nerfed since then. It's on a short cooldown as well, however the tooltip on this seems to change daily. This ability is more consistent in terms of AoE because you don't have to aim it. However, finding the 30 fury required to use this ability can be awkward at times. In your typical DH rotation, you'd want to I-Beam into a Blade Dance, but that leaves you with no fury afterwards to spend for Glaive Tempest, so you would need to hit Demon's Bite afterwards, then use it. This can be compounded if you don't play First Blood either, which reduces the cost of your Blade Dance. Fury generating talents such as Burning Hatred and Blind Fury help with this issue though. Right now, this talent seems like it doesn't have a place where it fits in the meta compared to other talents. It does less damage compared to Unbound and is capped to 5 targets. Trail of Ruin still pipes and could be the go-to for single target situations, but even if that's not the case, I still think it outperforms the others in PvP. All 3 of these talents look strong though and could have their place in certain scenarios. It really is just hard to tell without Sims right now. Here's where we start to get into the big nerfs. I'm sure lots of PvPers will be happy about these nerfs besides Demon Hunters. Soul Rending has been changed to only give 5% leech now, but it's been buffed in meta to 25%. This change hurts our sustain as Demon Hunters, considering our demonic uptime going into Shadowlands is going to be less than it was in BFA. Losing Eyes of Rage is part of this, as we won't be able to spam I-Beam as frequently to stay in meta. 5% leech is hardly noticeable, and I think most hardcore PvE players will stick to Netherwalk as their go-to for the guaranteed immunity. Desperate Instincts has also been changed. It now only adds a 10% damage reduction to Blur instead of 15%. This talent didn't need a nerf, especially since nobody picked it to begin with. The automatic trigger for Blur is really what's bad about it and requires for Blur not to be on cooldown. You're better off having complete control of your major defensive cooldown and getting passive healing or an immunity from the other talents. I think they should honestly just change this talent overall to a 5 or 10 second cooldown reduction on Blur, but that could make it a little overkill with Blur being such a short cooldown as it is now. Netherwalk has also been nerfed. It is now a 3-minute cooldown instead of a 2-minute cooldown. Being able to completely immune damage is certainly powerful and could warrant the nerf, but they really are just slapping us in the face at this point. Cycle of Hatred has also been changed to adopt the Eyes of Rage Azurite trait from BFA. Whenever Chaos Strike refunds Fury, it reduces the cooldown of I-Beam by 3 seconds. My issue with this talent is that we currently don't have a plethora of Fury to work with to maximize our chances at reducing I-Beam. I think further down in the expansion when we have more stats, this could have potential, especially in combination with some legendaries involving I-Beam. Competing with First Blood will be challenging though, since it has been a staple for DH gameplay for quite some time now. The large damage it provides combined with the Fury reduction for Blade Dance feel almost pivotal in the rotation. In BFA, we would get so many fragments from Demonic Appetite because our haste was so high and we had larger demonic windows, so we were just pumping out fragments. While we can still get lots of fragments, it won't be comparable to how it was in late BFA. In addition, having the cooldown reduction tied to one ability is a handicap in itself. My biggest example for this is when pulling large trash packs in Mythic Plus. It would actually be a DPS boost to Chaos Nova to proc as many fragments as you can to get a massive reduction for your I-Beam, in addition to getting them from Demonic Appetite. Dark Slash has been changed to Essence Break. Essence Break slashes all enemies in front of you, causing Chaos Strike and Blade Dance to deal 40% increased damage to them for 8 seconds. This is a nice upgrade over the previous version, but don't expect to see this to have much use. Demonic has been changed to only last 6 seconds now instead of 8 seconds. You can still fit 2 death sweeps per demonic window, but it needs to be immediately after your I-Beam, and you cannot delay the second one whatsoever. This is how you should be playing anyways. This nerf plus no more Eyes of Rage means extremely less demonic uptime. This hurts the overall damage of this talent and added survivability you would get with it too, that paired nicely with Soul Rending. Nemesis has been completely removed and swapped with Fel Barrage. This is an interesting change, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it. Fel Barrage is known for its burst AoE damage. However, this makes it an extremely niche talent compared to the other 2 talents that have broader uses. With all the new AoE tools in our possession, such as Unbound Chaos, Glaive Tempest, and a Throw Glaive Legendary, weaving in all these AoE abilities together could be overkill and unnecessary. It really just depends on how often the need for this will arise and will be worth taking over the other 2 options. The core gameplay for Demon Hunters from BFA's latest patch to Shadowlands has changed dramatically. This is all because Infinite Stars will no longer be a part of our core rotation. I know many of you are upset by this change just as much as I am, but sadly, it's time for it to go, and I'm sure it will be missed. Seriously though, thank God corruption is going away. The RNG fiesta it was for Demon Hunters felt complete shit sometimes. The fact that it was out of our control and seeing someone else's stars do twice as much more damage than yours felt terrible. Hopefully with this expansion, we won't be prone to that, but it is Blizzard we were talking about, so there will always be some RNG. Okay, enough memeing though. I believe our reduction in survivability and the removal of the Azurite trait, Eyes of Rage, will probably be the biggest noticeable changes. I-Beam will feel like a much longer cooldown now, and you will feel a little gimped when not in Metamorphosis. The pace of the gameplay will feel a little slow, including Fury generation, but Furious Gaze and some Fury generating talents help smoothen it out. It's not painfully slow, and I think most players will still enjoy it. New talents change the rotation a little bit, such as Unbound Chaos and Glaive Tempest, where you'd want to weave those in during an encounter, but that won't change the overall feel of it. There are also some legendaries that affect our playstyle a little bit, but I will talk more about that when we get there. For Covenants, there is really only one option. To put it simply, go Venthyr if you want to be good at pretty much every type of content. The Covenant ability you get from the Venthyr is called Sinful Brand. This ability brands the target, reducing their melee attack speed and casting speed by 30%, and does massive shadow damage over 8 seconds. Your Metamorphosis will also apply Sinful Brand to all nearby targets at its impact. Meta does not extend the duration of your Sinful Brand if already applied. That being said, you want to hold out on using Meta until you have received the full duration from your initial Sinful Brand. The ability by itself does large damage on a short cooldown, making it a good single target option while still having nice AoE potential as well. This ability is affected by haste, therefore in order to maximize its damage, you preferably would want to be in meta for the added haste, then use this after your I-Beam into Blade Dance combo because of Furious Gaze. Little side note, it is a magic debuff that is dispellable for all my PvPers out there. Its damage and dispellable nature feels similar to the Forbidden Obsidian Claw trinket that many casters use in PvP now as of 8.3. Door of Shadows is another ability from the Venthyr with lots of potential. Essentially, it is a channeled teleport to wherever you want. Mythic Plusters have praised this ability as another way to skip trash packs in dungeons, similar to Shadow Mode. All around, this is just a fantastic ability for all kinds of content. The soulbinds offered by the Venthyr make this covenant even more so of a powerhouse. Nagia will be the first accessible soulbind who offers access to the Thrillseeker buff. This increases your haste by 20% for 10 seconds once you reach 40 stacks of Euphoria. Stacks are gained by being in combat and when you kill mobs. Sounds pretty easy and pretty good, right? But I think there's a buff that's even better offered by the second soulbind, Theotar. He gives access to the Wasteland proprietary buff that gives you 10% versatility and 4% versatility to 4 other allies whenever you use your class ability. Having this be tied to your Covenant class ability is pretty insane. There are some classes that don't even have a cooldown for theirs, like Arms Warrior with Condemn, which make this even more mind-boggling if there's no internal cooldown on it. In addition, both of these soulbinds offer insane effects for Door of Shadows, such as a disorient at its location with Nagia, or the capability of clearing all roots and snares with Theotar. I know I'm praising Theotar a lot, but this guy even offers a trait that shields an ally if they use a healing or beneficial magic effect on you. It's basically a charity resounding protection for your friend that only has a 20-second internal cooldown. I think Theotar is going to be the clear winner for PvP, at least for Demon Hunters. That being said, both soulbind trees have their benefits, and I think they are both extremely strong for a variety of content. Kyrian is perhaps the other covenant you could choose and still feel a little confident about your decision, even though you know you should have went Venthyr deep down. Elysian Decree is the ability you get for siding with the Kyrian. It's a nice AoE tool on a 1-minute cooldown that places a sigil on the ground that detonates shortly after and releases up to 3 soul fragments from mobs hit. The radius on this ability is large and can be a good tool for burst healing and resource generation when paired with Demonic Appetite. Its real issue is that its damage is purely focused around AoE. It does decent damage, however, Simple Brand does more damage and isn't limited solely to AoE damage. Hear me out on this, and this is a rough estimate, but based off starting tooltip information, you would need to pull around 4 mobs every time for it to outperform Simple Brand's single target damage. Keep in mind, Simple Brand also has the potential for huge AoE damage. Simple Brand's downfall lies in its dot effect, where it would lose value if it doesn't reach its full duration. However, then you're running into a situation where you aren't using it to its maximum potential, or mobs are dying too quickly. However, with more challenging content, having it reach its full duration of 8 seconds will be easy to achieve and offer more instances where it outperforms the AoE potential of Elysian Decree. Moving along, Summon Steward is the general ability you get from the Kyrian. This is a nice ability that basically gives access to an extra empowered health stone that is capable of clearing curses, diseases, bleeds, and poison effects. This is strong and could be useful for progression. The soulbind trees from the Kyrian didn't stand out nearly as much as the Venthyr, with Pelagos being the only saving grace with his Let Go of the Past ability that gives 1% versatility for every spell used, up to 5%, as long as it's not a repeat of the previous spell. In my opinion, you're better off going with my boy Theotar, because you're at least guaranteed double the versatility benefit with no micromanagement needed, in addition to buffing your teammates. I'm going to keep the next 2 covenants short, as I don't think there's much to talk about because I think the other 2 options are simply just better. The ability you get from the Necrolords is called Fodder to the Flame. This summons a demon from the Theater of Pain that you must kill. Upon death, it will create a pool of green demon blood that increases your attack speed by 20% and reduces the damage you take by 10% when standing in it. It's important to note, since it's guaranteed to be a demon, you will always benefit from the Shattered Souls ability that demon hunters inherently have, giving us 20% increased damage for 15 seconds when consuming the soul of a demon. This sounds good in theory, but it comes with its issues. My first problem with this ability is that the increased attack speed is not the greatest buff and hardly feels noticeable. Making it a more universal buff like haste would feel far more impactful. Second, this ability limits your movement and ties you to that specific area if you want its benefit. It almost defeats the purpose of being a melee, since that is one of our biggest strengths, being able to do damage while still moving. Third, this ability is clunky. When you press this ability, the demon always spawns a certain distance away from you and sprints towards you shortly afterwards. Problem is that sometimes you can kill the demon too fast and then it drops the pool away from you. This just feels like another reason to scrap this ability because of the micromanagement required. The damage buff from the Demon Soul is nice, but I don't think it will outweigh the damage potential of Sinful Brand, and it is on a longer cooldown. If anything, this seems to be more of a tank-oriented ability, since tanks generally want to move as little as possible for the DPS. Fleshcraft is the general ability from the Necrolords. This ability gives you a strong shield after channeling for a certain period. The defensive benefit this offers is strong, but the downside is the channeling aspect of it. It's perfect before the start of fights, but in mid-combat you will literally need to find downtimes where you can sit there and channel it again. Siding with the Night Fae gives access to the Hunt ability. This ability is a channel that charges toward your target, rooting them in place for 3 seconds and inflicting damage over 6 seconds. Hitting the target marked with the Hunt debuff heals you for a certain percent of the damage. I previously said this would be the go-to PvP Covenant, but I don't think that will be the case anymore. Before, this ability didn't heal you and actually allowed you to ignore line of sight on the target, teleporting onto them every 30 seconds for its minute-long duration, in addition to providing extra Fury generation. I was actually pretty shocked to find out this ability got changed. Maybe they thought the line of sight aspect was too broken and could be a pain in the ass for healers, and they just said CBA. I can see it now. Angry healers raging in the forums about how Demon Hunters need to be nerfed because they're just getting railed the whole time from this ability. Honestly, it didn't seem broken to me, but I guess I am the Demon Hunter here. I really only think it would have been super useful for catching up to monks or druids. Basically, super mobile healers who can prove tricky for Demon Hunters in PvP. I don't even think it's strong anymore, as the LOS aspect is what really drew me towards it in the first place. You're better off just going with flat damage in Sinful Brand, because that can at least force a dispel or have huge kill potential if not dispelled. This was such a cool ability too, and fun to play with, and very similar to how it was in Heroes of the Storm. It's actually such a shame how much they changed this ability, and I'm glad I got to play around with it before this change. Regardless, I don't think this Covenant will see any play for PvE content, and the healing aspect of it seems lackluster. The general ability you get is called Soul Shape. This turns you into a fox that increases your movement speed by 50% and allows you to teleport every few seconds. Perhaps for less mobile classes, this would be big, but for Demon Hunters, this just ain't it. Moving on to Conduits, I'm only going to go over the most powerful Conduits of each type, but generally the potency Conduits are the best for most classes. That being said, I highly recommend you go down the 3 potency path, as some of them are too strong to pass up. Conduits that buff your class Covenant ability are usually a solid pick, like the one reducing the cooldown of Sinful Brand called Increased Scrutiny. At rank 1, this appears to only reduce the cooldown of it by 1 second, which is insignificant to warrant picking it at the beginning, and you're better off going with something else. However, once we can get higher ranks for this Conduit, reducing its cooldown by like 5 to 10 seconds, this will be much more valuable. Another solid pick is Growing Inferno, which increases the damage of your Immolation Aura by 10% each time it deals damage. So each tick makes the next tick deal even more damage. Serrated Glaive would be the next best option, causing enemies to take 8% increased damage from your I-Beam if hit by Throw Glaive. This is practically going to be effortless with the Throw Glaive Legendary, and you will definitely want to use this Conduit with it. If you don't play that Legendary, it could still be worth it to weave in Throw Glaive for the increased I-Beam damage. Lastly, we have Dancing with Fate, which has a 5% chance to apply Essence Break to your targets from Blade Dance. At first glance, this Conduit looks like it could be bad because the chance on it seems far too low, being only 5%. However, this has the chance to proc off each slash of your Blade Dance, giving you 4 chances. Also, keep in mind when we are able to get higher ranks for our Conduits, the chance on this will be much higher, so we will be able to proc this more consistently, making it a pretty solid Conduit in my opinion. The other types of Conduits are more open to interpretation and shouldn't have any merit on your DPS. Spell Defender is most likely the best defensive Conduit, reducing our major defensive cooldown Blur by 5 seconds. Blur being reduced to a 55-second cooldown is actually absurd, since it still gives 20% damage reduction and a 50% chance to dodge. Shattered Restoration is another powerful defensive Conduit that increases the healing of our shattered souls by 10%, increasing it to 30%. This is actually huge, as one soul will almost heal 1/3 of our HP back. Pair this with Demonic Appetite, we might actually be looking like our previous BFA selves. Lastly, Finesse Conduits are basically all utility benefits that really shine in PvP and should be picked on your personal preference. Ravenous Consumption gives Consume Magic a 15% chance to dispel a second effect. This is the one I would probably go with, considering a 15% chance is pretty decent. I could really see it shining against Paladins or Druids. For Paladins, let's say you manage to purge Bop and Divine Favor from one consumed magic. This leaves them in a very vulnerable state and highly susceptible to being interrupted. For Druids, I can see it being good for getting rid of Innervates and Thorns more consistently. If you're a Blood Elf too, you could potentially purge 3 things in a matter of seconds. Demonic Parole offers a slow after your Imprison ends, which will help with landing mana burns. Lost in Darkness increases Spectral Sight's duration by 3 seconds after attacking or taking damage, which feels like an extremely niche benefit. This really shines against stealth comps in PvP, specifically for rogues, giving you a bigger window to try and break them out of stealth to prevent big openers. Alright, I'm going to try to limit my talking for this next section, as I made a separate video for Demon Hunter Legendaries that I will leave a link for down in the description below. One legendary power that I like that is also very consistent is the Collective Anguish power. When you I-beam, you will summon an allied Demon Hunter who casts Fell Devastation, which is the Vengeance I-beam equivalent. This Demon Hunter will always spawn to your right and doesn't follow your I-beam once started, so aim it accordingly. The damage is solid and gives nice AoE burst damage in addition to decent single target damage. Overall, it is just a solid pick that doesn't rely on RNG to proc and could be even more useful if Cycle of Hatred becomes a popular pick further in the expansion. Another one that I think could be strong perhaps later in the expansion is the Erratic Felcore legendary power. It reduces the cooldown of Fel Rush by 30%, making it a 7-second cooldown. This legendary pairs nicely with Momentum, leading to more uptime on it. However, with current power in beta, it is difficult to capitalize on the Momentum windows. With the upcoming Castle Nathria raid, I don't see Momentum and this legendary being played that much, at least for progression. There are some fights that restrict your movement like Sludge Fist, where Fel Rushing all over the place could mean certain death. Definitely don't count this legendary out though, as it can be used for a variety of content and could be better when we are able to get more stats. The Fel Bombardment legendary power is probably the most game changing in terms of playstyle for Demon Hunters. This gives your Immolation Aura a chance to grant a stack of Fel Bombardment. Each stack increases the damage of your next throw glaive by 20%, stacking up to 5 times, and it will launch an additional glaive at a nearby target. The damage potential of this legendary is crazy and is increasingly better as more targets come into the equation. Every time Immolation Aura does damage to a mob, it has a chance to get a stack, and if there are 5 mobs, you can get 5 chances for a stack from a single tick of Immolation Aura. You will want to play the Master of the Glaive talent with this legendary for an extra charge on throw glaive in order to take advantage of rapid stacks gained from large pulls. Unfortunately, this legendary is still bugged on beta, where the extra glaive from the legendary can pull mobs that are literally miles away from your current position. I'm assuming that this will get fixed at some point, but who knows. Let's finally talk about PvP and how all these new changes and powers affect Demon Hunters going into Shadowlands. First, we have some honor talent changes to go over. Solitude has been removed now, which is unfortunate because I like this talent for 2s, at least in some scenarios. We are getting a couple of new talents that will definitely be more than enough to make up for this. Demon Hunters have been limited in their comp selection, primarily because not having Immortal Strike makes it difficult to close games out. Constant pressure from MS really takes a toll on healers' mana, as they have to pump more heals out to top that person. This is why Mana Burn has been such a prevalent and reliable pick for many Demon Hunters to quickly healers and make up for that lack of MS. But now we are getting a new talent called Mortal Rush, which is a Mortal Strike cleave applied from your Fel Rush. It's kind of shitty that it is applied from Fel Rush, as Fel Rush is primarily a good gap closer. Having it tied to our Mortal Strike pushes us towards a more aggressive playstyle with our Fel Rushes, forcing us to pass up on some ability for added pressure. It's not terrible since we still have many ways to get around by double jumping effectively and vengeful retreating when needed, but this could be noticeable at times. Mana Burn is also still available for Demon Hunters, so in theory we could be ooming healers faster than ever. Another honor talent we are getting is called Cleanse by Flame. This enhances our Immolation Aura, causing it to dispel all magical effects on us when used. Immolation Aura is such a short cooldown that you probably won't need to think about this that much, but managing this appropriately can be crucial at times. For instance, if I go against another Venthyr Demon Hunter, I can choose to hold out on using Immolation Aura so I can dispel myself after he has used his Sinful Brand on me. That's a big chunk of damage I just completely avoided, and more importantly, frees my healer of a Dispel, allowing him to do other things. This is also going to be massive against heavy dot classes. Think Shadow Priest and Affliction Locks, who could be strong contenders going into next expansion. Don't forget that Reverse Magic is also still at our disposal. Essentially, we will have access to 2 Dispels that can be crucial for changing the outlook on a game. Lots of great honor talents to choose from, and I think most of them will have their benefits for different situations. As far as regular talents go, and what I think will be strong going into next expansion, I think you still will want to go Demonic Appetite in the first row for added survivability. However, Fellblade can definitely see some play still. The talents in the second row all have their uses, but I personally would go with Burning Hatred to give me extra fury to start out with and play with in general. Trail of Ruin looks to be the best in the third row. The damage output of it is too good to pass up, especially with First Blood. Glaive Tempest suffers in its ability to potentially break CC and requires unwanted fury management for comparable damage to Trail of Ruin. Mana Burning will still be a strong playstyle that also requires fury management. Finding appropriate times to consistently use Glaive Tempest off cooldown in tandem with Mana Burn will require excellent fury management that could feel like you're spending more time pooling fury than actually doing damage. Even Unbound Chaos requires no fury management and can have huge synergy in PvP with Mortal Rush for some good burst damage. However, aiming it in PvP will be much more challenging since players have less predictable movement patterns. Soul Rending will still probably be the go-to defensive talent. In the next row, Cycle of Hatred could be a possible option for more demonic uptime, which equates to more survivability. However, First Blood still feels too good to pass up. Fell Eruption is a staple and should always be taken. For the last row, it's really just between Demonic and Momentum. Demonic still pulls ahead in my opinion for more meta uptime. However, Mortal Rush synergizes extremely well with Momentum and directly correlates to the aggressive playstyle you want to have for both talents. With Covenants coming into play now, Venthyr should be the go-to Covenant for PvP. Sinful Brand just does too much damage, and the other Covenant class abilities don't fare well with moving targets besides the Night Fae ability that appears lackluster. Plus, Theotar is too good of a soulbind for PvP. Some legendaries that I think could be strong are the Collective Anguish one and the Erratic Felcor one. The Collective Anguish legendary provides some nice burst damage that is difficult to avoid and could set up some kills. It's interesting to note if you get interrupted on your I-Beam while wearing this legendary, the allied Demon Hunter will still continue his I-Beam. The Erratic Felcor legendary allows you to keep Mortal Rush up more consistently and can boost our mobility even more. Overall, I think Demon Hunter gameplay for PvP will be pretty similar to how it was in BFA, with Mana Burning and Mortal Rush being the norm to quickly healers and be a reliable win conditions. We may appear squishier from heavy nerfs to our survivability, but don't let that deceive you with the new Soulbind and Conduit combinations being available to us. Lastly, new arena compositions could be possible with the addition of Mortal Rush. All things considered, Demon Hunters are in an okay spot. Demon Hunter gameplay has thrived upon the power systems that the class was introduced upon. Blizzard has made steps in the right direction to make some of that power baseline now with the recent effects added to existing abilities such as Chaotic Transformation and Furious Gaze. Our overall survivability has taken a huge toll for the worse, with big nerfs in almost every aspect, and hopefully these changes don't hurt us too much going forward. There have been some good talent changes made to offer a little more variety in our gameplay now. And finally, the balanced Covenant system that Blizzard envisioned completely missed the mark with Demon Hunters. But I think that's going to cover it for this video. Let me know your thoughts on Demon Hunters and these changes down in the comments. Be sure to hit that like button if you did in fact like the video. But until next time, dudes, peace.